In the far north of the Viking world, there came a moment each year when the sun simply didn't return. For nearly 30 days, Norse winter villages lived in complete darkness. No sunrise, no midday thaw, nothing but cold air slipping through every crack of the house. With wood piles already stretched thin from autumn, burning extra fuel wasn't an option. Yet somehow, these settlements stayed warm enough for families, elders, and livestock to make it through the longest night on Earth. Their secret wasn't a roaring fire, it was a house that acted like a thermal machine. Turf walls as thick as a grown man, green roofs weighted with frozen soil, and earth-packed foundations that held on to heat long after the flames died. A single slow-burning hearth, a barn full of animals generating quiet body heat. And even heated stones tucked into beds turned these homes into passive heaters. How did Norse builders create winter houses so efficient they survived a month of darkness without burning through their wood supply? Part 1. In the high latitudes of the north, where the Earth's tilt plunges the world into a prolonged twilight, there exists a period of profound and enduring darkness. For weeks on end, the sun does not rise above the horizon. This is the polar night, a time of deep cold and perpetual gloom that has shaped life in the Arctic for millennia. For the Norse people of the Viking Age, who pushed the boundaries of the known world to settle in the harsh landscapes of northern Norway, Iceland, and Greenland, the polar night was not just a curiosity. It was a fundamental challenge to their very existence. In a world without electricity, where the only sources of light and heat were the flickering flames of a fire, how did these winter villages survive the 30-day darkness? More remarkably, how did they engineer their homes and their lives to do so without burning through their precious stores of firewood? This is the story of a forgotten form of thermal engineering, a masterclass in passive heating and energy conservation developed by the Norse people 1,000 years before the concepts of sustainability or energy efficiency entered our vocabulary. It is a narrative that goes beyond the simple image of a roaring fire in a longhouse. It is about the ingenious design of their buildings, the strategic use of the Earth's own warmth, the clever management of body heat, and the creation of a system so efficient that it could maintain a livable temperature through the darkest, coldest weeks of the year with minimal fuel consumption. This was not about burning more wood. It was about wasting less heat. The psychological toll of the endless night was as great a threat as the cold itself, and the Norse solution was a holistic one, where the warmth of the home was inseparable from the warmth of the community. Our journey takes us to the reconstructed Viking longhouses of today and the archaeological sites of the past, from the Lofoten Islands in Norway to the windswept coasts of Iceland. Here, we find the evidence of a sophisticated architectural tradition, one that was perfectly adapted to the extreme conditions of the north. The iconic longhouse, with its curved roof and timber frame, was more than just a dwelling. It was a carefully calibrated thermal machine. Its design, its materials, and its very orientation in the landscape were all part of a complex strategy to capture and retain every possible unit of heat. These were not just shelters, they were living systems designed to breathe with the seasons and to create a pocket of stability in a world of extremes. We will explore the concept of the bearmed, or earth-sheltered house, a technique where homes were built into hillsides or had their walls piled high with thick layers of turf and soil. This was not a primitive form of construction. It was a brilliant use of the Earth's thermal mass to create a natural, year-round insulation. We will analyze the multi-layered structure of the turf walls and roofs, a composite material of soil, roots, and grass that provided a level of insulation that is surprisingly effective even by modern standards. We will see how the very ground beneath their feet became their greatest ally against the cold. But the story does not end with the structure of the house. It extends to the very way of life within its walls. We will investigate the practice of bringing livestock into the Longhouse during the winter, a decision that was not just about protecting the animals, but about harnessing their considerable body heat to help warm the human living space. We will examine the design of the central hearth, not as a primary heat source, but as a low-intensity, multi-purpose hub for cooking, light, and social gathering, whose main thermal contribution was often made long after the flames had died down. And we will uncover the secrets of the heat battery bed, an ingenious system of heated stones that could provide warmth through the night without the danger of an open fire. This is a story of resilience, adaptation, and a deep intuitive understanding of the laws of physics. It is a story that challenges our modern dependence on active, energy-intensive heating systems and offers a powerful lesson in the art of living with, rather than against, the forces of nature. This is how the Norse winter villages survived the 30-day darkness, not by fighting the cold, but by embracing the warmth of the earth, the community, and the home. The fire was not a weapon against the winter. It was a tool for managing it, a small, carefully controlled heart in a home that was itself a living, breathing organism designed to thrive in the long, dark night. Part 2. The cornerstone of the Norse strategy for surviving the polar night was the design of their homes. The Viking Longhouse was not a one-size-fits-all design. It was a highly adaptable architectural form that was modified and refined to suit the specific environmental conditions and available resources of each settlement. In the densely forested regions of southern Scandinavia, the Longhouse was a magnificent timber-framed structure, a testament to the Vikings' skill as carpenters. But as the Norse pushed north and west into the treeless landscapes of Iceland and Greenland, the design of the Longhouse evolved. Wood became a precious, often imported commodity, and the builders had to turn to the most abundant and effective insulating material available, the earth itself. This led to the development of the Icelandic turf house, a masterpiece of vernacular architecture and a prime example of an earth-sheltered, or bermed, building. These houses were often built into the side of a hill, using the earth as a natural windbreak and insulator on one or more sides. Where a convenient hillside was not available, the builders would construct a wooden frame and then pile thick blocks of turf, or sod, against the exterior walls. These turf walls could be up to 2 meters thick, creating a massive thermal barrier between the interior living space and the frigid outside air. The sheer mass of these walls was critical. They didn't just insulate, they stored energy, a concept we now call thermal mass. The turf itself was a carefully selected composite material. The best turf was cut from peat bogs, where the dense network of roots and partially decomposed plant matter created a strong, stable building block. The turf was cut into blocks, often in a herringbone pattern, and layered to create a thick, insulating wall. The herringbone pattern was not just decorative, it added structural integrity to the wall, locking the blocks together and preventing them from shifting. The roof, too, was covered in layers of turf, laid over a base of birch bark and a wooden frame. This green roof not only provided excellent insulation, but also helped to weigh the structure down and protect it from the fierce Arctic winds. The genius of the turf house lies in its use of thermal mass. The thick earth and turf walls acted as a massive heat sink. During the brief periods when a fire was lit for cooking, or when the house was filled with the body heat of people and animals, the walls would slowly absorb and store that heat. Then, during the long, cold hours of the night, the walls would gradually release that stored heat back into the living space, creating a stable and relatively comfortable interior temperature. This passive heating effect was the key to surviving the polar night without constantly burning firewood. The house itself became the primary heating system. The Norse builders understood intuitively that the earth beneath their feet was a vast reservoir of stable, low-grade heat, a resource to be tapped into, not ignored. The interior layout of the Longhouse was also designed for thermal efficiency. The living space was typically a single long room with a central hearth, or langeld, running down the middle. Along the sides of the room were raised wooden platforms which served as benches during the day and beds at night. This arrangement kept the people off the cold ground and closer to the warmer air that collected near the ceiling. The curved, boat-like shape of the longhouse roof, even in the turf houses, was not just for aesthetic reasons. It helped to channel the rising, warm air from the hearth back down towards the living areas, improving heat circulation and preventing the buildup of stagnant cold air pockets. In the most extreme environments, such as Greenland, the Norse took these principles even further. Archaeological evidence shows that many Greenlandic longhouses were part of a complex of interconnected buildings, all linked by covered passages. This created a self-contained, insulated environment where people could move between their living quarters, workshops, and animal byres without ever having to go outside. It was a village under one roof, a microcosm of the community sealed against the winter darkness. This architectural strategy minimized heat loss to the outside world and created a shared, buffered microclimate within the settlement, a powerful example of community-scale thermal design. Part 3. While the design of the longhouse was the primary defense against the cold, the Norse employed a number of other ingenious strategies to conserve and generate heat during the 30-day darkness. These techniques, all based on a deep understanding of natural principles, allowed them to minimize their reliance on firewood and make the most of every available source of warmth. One of the most important of these strategies was the integration of livestock into the living space. During the harshest winter months, the Vikings would bring their cattle, sheep, and other animals into one end of the longhouse. This practice, which might seem unhygienic to modern sensibilities, was a matter of survival. The animals were a valuable asset, and protecting them from the cold was essential. But they were also a significant source of heat. A single cow can generate as much body heat as 10 humans. A longhouse filled with a dozen or more animals was, in effect, a living furnace. The body heat from the livestock would help to raise the ambient temperature of the entire longhouse, reducing the amount of firewood needed to keep the human living quarters comfortable. The animal end of the longhouse was typically separated from the human end by a low wall or partition which allowed the heat to circulate while keeping the animals contained. The floor of the animal byre was often dug lower than the hoo. The central hearth, the langeld, was another key element in this system of thermal efficiency. Unlike the large, roaring fires we might imagine, the Viking hearth was typically a small, slow-burning fire used primarily for cooking and light. The Norse were masters of fuel conservation. They understood that a small, hot fire was more efficient for cooking than a large, flaming one. They also knew that a bed of glowing embers covered with a layer of insulating ash would continue to radiate heat for many hours after the flames had died down. This technique, known as banking, the fire was a common practice. Before going to sleep, the family would cover the embers of the hearth with ash. The ash would insulate the coals, preventing them from burning out too quickly, while still allowing a gentle, radiant heat to permeate the room. In the morning, the ash could be scraped away, and the still glowing embers used to restart the fire. This was a simple but effective way of keeping the heart of the home warm through the night without burning. Another ingenious technique was the use of heated stones or heat battery beds. Archaeological finds and historical accounts suggest that the Vikings would heat smooth, dense stones in the central hearth during the day. These stones, with their high thermal mass, would absorb a large amount of heat. At night, the hot stones would be wrapped in cloth or animal skins and placed in the sleeping areas. These personal portable heaters would slowly release their stored warmth over several hours, providing a safe and comfortable source of heat close to the body. This was a particularly effective way of keeping children and the elderly warm, and it completely eliminated the fire risk associated with sleeping too close to the open hearth. This practice demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of heat transfer and storage, a low-tech form of the same principle used in modern thermal energy storage systems. Finally, the Norse understood the importance of communal living. The Longhouse was not a collection of private rooms, it was a shared communal space. Families slept together on the raised platforms, their bodies huddled together for warmth. This simple act of sharing body heat was a surprisingly effective way of staying warm. During the day, the Longhouse was a hub of activity filled with the energy and warmth of the entire community. This constant human presence, combined with the heat from the animals, the hearth, and the house itself, created a microclimate, a bubble of warmth and life in the midst of the frozen, dark landscape. The social structure of the Longhouse was, in itself, a thermal strategy. The bonds of kinship and community were not just a social reality. They were a physical one, a collective shield against the encroaching cold. Part 4. Let us imagine a Norse winter village in the heart of the polar night. It is the 20th day of darkness. Outside, the temperature has dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius, and a fierce wind is blowing off the frozen sea. The world is a monochrome landscape of snow and ice, illuminated only by the faint light of the moon and stars. But inside the Longhouse, a different world exists. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, wet wool, and the sweet scent of hay. The only light comes from the gentle glow of the central hearth, where a small fire is being used to cook the evening meal, a hearty stew of salted fish and root vegetables. The house is alive with the sounds of the community. Children are playing a game with carved bone pieces on the floor. Women are mending clothes and spinning wool by the light of the fire. Men are repairing tools and telling stories of past voyages. At one end of the Longhouse, the lowing of cattle can be heard, a constant, reassuring presence. The combined body heat of the 20 or so people and a dozen animals has raised the interior temperature to a comfortable 10 or 15 degrees Celsius, a full 40 degrees warmer than the outside air. The thick turf walls, now frozen solid, are a near impenetrable barrier to the cold. The small amount of heat being generated inside is being effectively trapped and stored. As the evening meal is finished, the fire in the hearth is allowed to die down. The remaining embers are carefully covered with a thick layer of ash. The stones that have been heating in the fire all day are now retrieved. Wrapped in scraps of wool, they are carried to the sleeping platforms, where they are placed at the foot of the beds. The family gathers on the platforms, pulling thick reindeer hides over themselves. They huddle together, sharing their body heat. The warmth of the heated stones and the lingering radiant heat from the banked fire and the turf walls. The stories continue in the dim light, voices weaving a tapestry of myth and memory that holds the darkness at bay. Through the night, the house works its magic. The thermal mass of the walls and the stone hearth slowly releases the heat it has stored during the day. The banked fire continues to glow, a faint but steady source of warmth. The bodies of the sleeping people and animals generate a constant low-level heat. There is no new wood being burned. There is no active source of heating. And yet, the temperature inside the Longhouse remains stable, dropping by only a few degrees. The family sleeps warm and safe, protected from the storm that rages outside. The only sound is the rhythmic breathing of the sleepers and the occasional sigh of a cow, a symphony of life in the heart of the frozen world. This is the genius of the Norse system. It was a holistic, integrated approach to thermal management. It was not about a single technology, but about a combination of many small, intelligent strategies. The insulating power of the turf walls, the thermal mass of the earth and stones, the body heat of the people and animals, the efficient management of the fire, and the communal nature of their lives, all of these elements worked together to create a system that was far more than the sum of its parts. It was a system that allowed the Norse to thrive in one of the most challenging environments on Earth, to create a warm and vibrant community in the heart of the 30-day darkness. It was a system built on the principle of conservation, not consumption, a principle that we are only now beginning to relearn. Part 5. The world of the Norse Vikings, with its long ships, long houses, and long dark winters, may seem remote and distant to us today. But the principles of thermal engineering that they developed and perfected 1,000 years ago are more relevant now than ever before. In an age of climate change and dwindling energy resources, the Norse model of passive heating and energy conservation offers a powerful and inspiring alternative to our modern, high-consumption lifestyles. The Icelandic turf house is a prime example of this. It is a building that is so deeply integrated with its environment that it is difficult to tell where the house ends and the landscape begins. It is a model of sustainable, place-based architecture, a house that is literally built from the ground it stands on. Today, as architects and builders search for more sustainable ways to build, the principles of the turf house, the use of local, natural materials, the harnessing of the Earth's thermal mass, the design of green roofs, are being rediscovered and reinterpreted in the context of modern building science. The passive house movement, which aims to create ultra-low energy buildings that require little to no active heating or cooling, is in many ways a high-tech echo of the low-tech brilliance of the Norse Longhouse. Modern concepts like super-insulation, airtight construction, and heat recovery ventilation are all attempts to replicate the same level of thermal performance that the Norse achieved with turf, stone, and clever design. The Norse approach to heat management also offers a profound lesson. In our modern homes, we are accustomed to on-demand heating. We flick a switch, and a furnace or heat pump floods our rooms with warm air. It is a system that is powerful and convenient, but also incredibly wasteful. The Norse system was the opposite. It was a system of slow, patient, and deliberate heat management. Heat was a precious resource, to be captured, stored, and released with care. The banked fire, the heated stones, the communal sleeping arrangements, all of these were strategies for making the most of every unit of thermal energy. They were a reminder that comfort does not have to come at the cost of high energy consumption. The legacy of the Norse winter villages is not just in the archaeological remains of their longhouses or the artifacts in our museums. It is in the enduring wisdom of their approach to life. It is in the understanding that resilience is not about conquering nature, but about living in harmony with it. It is in the recognition that the most elegant and effective solutions are often the simplest. As we look to the future, to the challenges of building a more sustainable and resilient world, we would do well to look to the past, to the lessons of the Norse masters of the cold. They showed us that it is possible to create warmth, light, and community in the heart of the darkest winter. not by burning more wood, but by building a smarter home. They showed us that the key to survival and to thriving is not in the power of our fires, but in the wisdom of our designs. The story of their engineered homes is a reminder that the solutions to our future challenges may not lie in new inventions, but in the rediscovery of ancient wisdom, a wisdom that is waiting to be rekindled. As we face the challenges of a changing climate and the need for more sustainable ways of living, the lessons of the Arctic fire masters are more valuable than ever. They teach us that resilience is not about brute force, but about intelligent design, and that a truly sustainable system is one that is deeply integrated with its environment. They show us that the most powerful technologies are often the simplest, born from a direct and respectful relationship with the natural world, and they remind us that for thousands of years, in the coldest, darkest corners of the world, a small, well-tended fire has always been enough to hold back the night, a powerful symbol of human ingenuity, community, and the enduring flame of hope. The Norse did not just survive the winter, they created a culture of warmth, a legacy that continues to inspire us today. Their understanding of thermal dynamics was not written in textbooks, but in the very fabric of their homes and their lives. It was a knowledge born of necessity, honed over generations, and passed down through the stories told around the winter fire. It is a knowledge that we are only now beginning to appreciate, a testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity in the face of the most extreme challenges. The long, dark night of the Arctic winter was not a void to be feared, but a canvas on which the Norse people painted a masterpiece of survival, a masterpiece built of earth, stone, and the unbreakable bonds of community.